welcome back to the channel, everybody. This is John with SwingFit. So are you currently struggling with the misses to the right off the tee box? Or heck, it might even be those ugly snap hooks to the left, and no matter what you do or try, you just can't find the center of the fairway. If so, then I promise you, you're not alone, and today is a great day because, as you can tell, we are in the build shop, and I'm going to share one technique that's been around for a long time, and it's utilized by some of the best club builders in the world in order to help their customers overcome these situations day in and day out. And what I'm talking about is hot melting your golf clubs. In specific, I'm talking about those metal woods. And I promise you, this isn't going to be like any other video you watched before. Because not only am I going to help you understand when is it appropriate and why you might even want to consider using hot melt, but I'm going to show you how it's done. And heck, I might even share a couple tips and tricks along the way to help you understand which heads we like better than others for this process, and maybe help you understand what are those key errors that we want to avoid when we utilize this technique. So without further ado, let's jump in and see if we can help you straighten your game out. Now, before we get too deep in today's video and actually cut this bad boy in half so you can see the hot melt going into the driver, I do want to take a quick second to welcome any new viewers to the channel. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about the club fitting or building process like today's video, then I promise you, you are in the right location, and all you got to do is consider hitting that subscribe button below and turn on the bell so that way you never miss out on any of the cool content that we are sharing with you. Now, as a full disclaimer, what I'm about to share with you isn't anything new by any means. I mean, heck, I'll even go as far to say that this approach has been around for a long time. I'm talking many decades, and it's preferred by some of the best players in the world, and they still utilize hot melt in their golf clubs to this very day. I mean, Jon Rahm, Dustin Johnson, Rory McIlroy, all will have some form of hot melt in their golf clubs. But do you know the reason why they elect to use hot melt? Well, we're going to talk about those right now because these could be the very same reasons to help you turn your game around. With the first one being that of swing weight. And there's no secret that having a swing weight that's either 2 points too heavy or 2 points too light can do enough damage to throw your timing off, to really make it next to impossible to find center of face. And the guys on tour know this day in and day out, and one of the effective ways to increase the swing weight, especially if you don't have the correct size weights or any adjustable weights in your driver, is through the use of hot melt. So unless you want your driver to look something like this with a glob of ugly lead tape, and I can almost promise you that you don't really see many of these drivers out on tour because they're using hot melt to conceal the mass inside the head, and this is just a very effective way to dial in the swing weight. And the second most popular reason would be that of helping you control your launch windows and your spin characteristics. And we know that having more mass closer to the face of the driver can bring CG down, which will also lower launch, lower spin, and having the mass further away from the driver face can bring CG back, increasing launch and increasing spin, and thus making the driver a little bit more forgiving. But once again, what happens when you only have one fixed weight in the bottom of your driver? So maybe it's in the forward position or it's the back weighted position, and you need to offset that, and you just don't have a location to add mass unless you have hot melt. So being able to offset that back weight or forward weight to find a better balance could potentially be all the difference that you need in order to get your launch windows and spin characteristics dialed in, no different than the guys on tour. And last but not least would be that of helping you control your shot shape. And we do know this is all predicated on your face to path relationship. So depending on what side of the golf course you are struggling with, we may want to put a little hot melt in the heel area to kind of protect against the right side miss to help speed up that face rotation. And by just putting a little hot melt in the toe side of the driver could definitely slow down that face rotation to protect against those overdraws or those nasty hooks. And believe me, if the guys on tour isn't using hot melt to control their launch windows and spin characteristics, I can almost guarantee you they're definitely using it to control their starting line and the ball's curvature. And if this little secret can do wonders for their games, I know it can actually help you out as well. So now let's talk a little bit more about these hot melt devices that you're likely going to see in your local build shops. And they do come in all shapes and sizes. There's single-use applications, there's multiple-use applications. In fact, that's what this is, and this is really designed for high-volume build shops to, hot melt multiple clubs at the same time. This is the Champ 600, and they do have a couple other models, but I'll go as far to say that this is probably the mother of all hot melt guns. This is like the Mercedes-Benz of hot melt guns, and is preferred by some of the best club builders in the world, and you're likely going to find this model or a similar model in those tour vans as well, because it's just that popular. Now, other than size, as this thing truly could pass for a DeWalt power drill, there is one more big difference between this glue gun and the traditional glue gun you may have used in art class, and it really does come down to the material it uses and dispenses. And here's a picture of both of those materials side by side. The little square pillow packs on the right is what we would use in the hot melt guns, and the best way I can describe this is that even at room temperature, if you squeeze this little pillow packet of glue hard enough, you could probably cause it to bust because it's just that soft. Unlike the traditional glue sticks on the left, I mean, these things are very hard, and heck, you could probably even use them like drumsticks. So if you had your preference of what type of material you would like to leave inside your driver, then I don't think there's any question. We want to leave the soft, pliable material opposed to the hard, brittle material. And there's a couple other reasons why this is going to be very, very important, but we'll touch on that a little bit later. So enough chit chat, let's cut this driver in half and actually show you the hot melt gun in action. Now, that was the very first time, and hopefully the last time, I ever purposely take a cutoff wheel to a driver and just destroy it. But this is a Cobra King F8 driver from several years ago. It was just laying around. I was like, well, it's going to serve the purpose. Not only did I burn through a couple cutoff wheels trying to do so, but I also destroyed my dust vac system, and it's no longer working. And that's why you might notice that it's a little hazy in here now. So I apologize for that, but we're going to have to fight through it. But there's something interesting inside of this driver that I want to share with everybody. So here, take a look. And what I'm talking about is this little area here inside the driver. This is actually factory hot melt, and that's correct. Every single driver, once it leaves the manufacturing plant, is likely going to have some level of hot melt already put into the driver. And this is just another fine-tuned mechanism that they will use in order to get the driver to perform like it was designed to. As an example, this is the King F8, so placing this extra hot melt in between these two weight ports made it more of a draw bias driver, and having a little extra hot melt towards the back, pulled the CG from the face and actually made it a little bit more forgiving, and they did this on purpose. But, just take a look at something here. I take this golf tee and actually dig it into this hot melt. Just look how gooey and sticky this material actually is. And that's one of the reasons why we need this material to be very soft and pliable. This is because we don't want it to break off and float around in your driver. Now, without question, one of the easiest ways to add hot melt to a driver is if you actually had a detachable crown and that you can just take off, take your hot melt gun, insert it into it, and then put the crown back on, but that's not how it works. So the only way we can actually add hot melt is through the bottom of the head or through a hot melt port. And most drivers is going to have one or the other. In this situation, we have actually 2 access ports, so we can use the back weight or we can use the heel weight, because that set screw hole goes all the way through. So I'm going to take these screws out and I'm going to show you exactly what that would look like. So now with the set screw removed, all I have to do now is actually insert the tip of the hot melt gun into that hole. And you can now see I can actually have full access to inside the driver, and I can actually dispense that hot melt wherever I want. And just like that, we just added 2 grams of hot melt to the toe side of this driver, changing its playing characteristics. So by adding a little extra mass to the toe side, we're going to actually be able to help the customer curve the ball less to the left. So if he was struggling with those overdraws or those snap hooks, this would be exactly the best recipe, and just adding a little hot melt to the toe side can do the trick. Now there are a couple key things you need to be mindful of when you are using hot melt, such as we got to make sure we don't add too much hot melt, because once it goes in, it's not coming out. I mean, it's easy to actually insert the tip inside the driver to apply the hot melt, but it's next to impossible to pull that hot melt out through that same small little hole. So really, it's done. The only way to get it out is you have to actually destroy your driver just like we did. But you got to understand of how much is dispensed with a full trigger pull. So if you happen to own a hot melt gun or you're thinking about getting one, this would definitely be the very first thing I would advise anybody to do, is get yourself a little gram weight scale and put some tape on it or something, so that way you can pull it off. And then once it's set up and ready to dispense, give it a full trigger pull and measure how much in mass was applied. So this way you know that with a full trigger pull, it's applying exactly 2 grams, 2.5, or 3 grams, depending on the unit that you're using. So this is very, very important, because if you need to increase the swing weight by 3 points, then that's 3 trigger pulls for my unit. Now there's a couple other tips that I want to share with everybody, because I do see a lot of our customers get this wrong when they're trying to apply hot melt themselves, or heck, for any of those recreational club builders who's maybe just getting into hot melt. And that is, you got to make sure you avoid getting hot melt on the back of the driver face and the top part of the crown. And it can all be solved by making sure you pay attention to how much of the tip of the nozzle is actually getting into the driver. And a quick, easy way to do this is just get a Sharpie mark and measure back from the tip of the nozzle about 1.5 inches and put a little mark there. And from there, you just got to make sure it doesn't get too vertical, and that's going to keep it off of the top part of the crown. So whenever you insert the tip, just make sure you insert it into the hole and then rock the gun up as much as you possibly can while still keeping the driver level in your other hand. And this will ensure that you keep the hot melt off the top, as well as not getting too deep and getting any hot melt on the front of the face. And it's just that simple. In as little as 20 to 25 minutes, we can change your playing characteristics to help you mitigate the miss to the right, protect against the miss to the left, and it's just that easy. But there is one more little tip, is we do know that once you add the hot melt, it's never coming out. So definitely trust but verify before you actually apply it. And the best way to do that is to use high density lead tape. It's going to look ugly, but it's only temporary. So start applying some extra lead tape in the toe area. See if that helped. If it didn't work, then try apply it to the heel area, because you just might be surprised that's where you need the mass in order to overcome the miss that you're struggling with. So guys, if you have any questions or comments, do me a favor, leave them in the remarks below. And until next week, don't forget to take a look at one of these videos over here, because there just might be a couple golden nuggets that can help you take your game to another level. So thanks for watching.